Greetings, brothers and sisters. It's time for Sunday School Bonanza, where we talk about gospel doctrine lessons to get you prepared to go to gospel doctrine and be someone who does more than sits there and watches other people talk. This is to get you to talk, or to love church.
And to use our ideas to say them.
Yeah, use our ideas. And if you use them, please reference it parenthetically, footnote, however you want to do it, but please reference it en voz alta, as we say in Spanish, out loud.
Oh.
Yeah, that'd be good. That's what just jumped out at me. I don't know why I just speak Spanish sometimes for no reason. Right, honey? Totally. Yeah. Patricia Auxier is here with us. Sorry, Patricia, I didn't introduce you.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeff.
Oh, it's my pleasure. We love having you. I can't do these shows without these great people who surround me and make me look good, because I'm not that bright or well-versed in these things, but I've got great people who know what they're doing. So it's a lot of fun. We're on lesson 24 this week. Create in me a clean heart. 2 Samuel 11 and 12 primarily. Basically, that's it. 2 Samuel 11 and 12. And Psalm 51. A lot of powerful things happen in this lesson. A lot of it's an unfortunate lesson, but I guess there's a glimmer of hope at the end. There's some silver lining, some lessons that can be learned of true contrition.
And let's learn from his mistakes.
Yeah. So before we get to this, folks, your attention activity is a strong one, because your teacher might bring you up there and then bind you with like string, maybe. Yeah.
Floss, maybe a strand of floss.
And if you were tied up like by the wrists, do you think you could break if it's just one strand?
Oh yeah,
right?
Totally.
Totes, But what if I were to tie around your wrists many, many strands?
Many strands?
A lot of strands.
I don't think I could break it, Jeff.
Yeah?
I don't think I could do it.
Therein, brothers and sisters, lay the symbolism of this lesson. You can't break it. And this is what happens with David. He has so many opportunities to even just have the one string around his wrists, metaphorically, and break that and move on. But instead, he allows himself to get wrapped up more and more and more, almost down to his complete and total damnation, if it weren't for the fact that he does change a little bit later on. And it's unfortunate, because David was it was David, David was chosen over Saul after Saul was stupid in 1 Samuel 15. The Lord said, I'm done with you, Saul. David's going to be king someday. Don't worry about it. And a lot of things happened, and David's been in a good position for a long time. But
yeah, and it's sad that, for a long time, David was acclaimed for not killing Saul.
Yeah.
And for, honoring him and letting him live. And then for him to have Uriah essentially killed because he
just
sinned.
So like out of himself almost.
Yeah.
And we'll get to it. Most of you know the content of this, but I really see that the way sin affects us and temptation, the way the devil works, is like he takes you out of yourself in that sense. I think David, in a normal circumstance, would have looked at the actions he took that night and just been like, David, what are you doing? This is not me. This isn't who you are. But yet, at the same time, when we get trapped in the devil's snare, it's so easy to just like forget. And that's what Satan wants us to do. And that's exactly what happens to him here. I mean, Bathsheba is just, for whatever reason, just being an exhibitionist, out there washing herself. And David's walking around on his roof, where I'm assuming he has a commanding view of much of the city. And he sees Bathsheba. But what does he do? Does he just say, whoa, put on the brakes there. Let's turn away from that one.
Let's go for a run.
Yeah. Got to work it off somehow. And no, what does he do? He basically just sends for her, I assume, right? And then they lie together.
Well, I mean, and David's coming from a position of power. Definitely. We were talking about this before the show, but like even geographically, if he's able to see Bathsheba, who is bathing on her roof, that means that he is higher than she is. And so he knows that he can get what he wants. And I think that's gone to his head a little bit, instead of being humble and, following the Lord's commandment. Like, he saw what he wanted, and he wanted it right there, and he called her to him.
And they did their terrible deed. And the worst thing about this, that alone is bad. She's a married woman. Sins are all over the place on this. But then it does get worse as time goes on, unfortunately. Before we get to that, though, on the pure, like, chastity moral side of this thing, I'd really actually like this little chart in the lesson, and I hope that any of you listening, that your teachers do this. I think this is useful. There's a column of things to avoid and how to avoid them. And so I don't know, maybe we could just go. They're simple, they're obvious, but I think it's a good thing to keep in mind. Like the first one, just unclean or immoral thoughts. So what do we do?
We fill our minds with uplifting thoughts, Jeff.
It seems so rote, right, to say that, but it's totally true. I mean, there's been points in my life when, you have thoughts creep in my head, and I'm just like, yeah, and there's been times if you let it linger, and then there's times when you have enough faith and courage to actually actively pursue righteousness, which sometimes is the only way to really push out sin.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And the second one I think helps you to fill your mind with uplifting thoughts is choosing media that will inspire you to do good instead of media that is suggestive or pornographic or, just anything that doesn't inspire you to be better.
Yeah. Suggestive, pornographic, whether it's media, music, movies, and I think everyone has to make those decisions for him or herself and figure it out. Unwholesome dating activities. So there you go. Just follow for the strength of youth. Wear a lot of polo shirts and pastel colors and be close. I'm following the manual. The one I love they put in here, though, flirting after marriage. I think we both noticed this one before we started recording, which is fascinating. And it's a good reminder. Folks, stay true to your spouse.
Yeah, and I think that it's good because I think you can justify a lot of things in terms of like, oh, we're just friends, which is good. I mean, I think you should maintain friendships that you have, but your first loyalty and your first friendship needs to be with your spouse.
Yeah, totally.
Anything, they need to be the person that you confide in the most, and you need to keep that relationships first.
Yeah. And then the last one talks about just being in holy places. One thing I'd like to throw this question out there. We're instructed all the time to be in places, only do things where we can feel the Spirit. So what if you just enjoy going to the concert of a band you like? It might not be one that's full of lewd content or anything suggestive or sexual, but it's just a loud rockin' place where you're having a good time. And it's not going to be a place where you're going to receive personal revelation or anything like that. You're not. I mean, if you do, then you are an amazing person. But by and large, how do we balance that? How do we take things that are just fine, that don't actually build up the Spirit, with things that do, as opposed to things that just strictly take away?
Well, Jeff, I think we didn't talk about this, but I think it has to deal with like the frequency. I think going to shows is good as long as you're not like doing it every night, and instead of like doing your home teaching, you go to a show, if it's like this pattern in your life
if it's
where
in lieu of good stuff. Yeah.
Right. And I think, in moderation, as long as, it's a good show and they're not doing inappropriate things.
I don't mean like
I think you're
shows
fine.
Specifically, but whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It could be anything. And I love, this reminds me of I don't want to get too off topic here, but there was a general conference talk a while ago. I can't remember who it was, but he told the story of his daughter who was in a soccer league for school, and they had a championship game on Sunday. And I love the way he set it up, because he said like, well, honey, she's like, what should I do? They're like, you're taught. What should you do? Should you play? Should you not play? You make the decision. And I believe the moral of the story, it was great because she didn't just say like, no, I had the courage to say no and I didn't play the game. It was that his daughter played the game, and she talked about how sort of empty she felt from her Sabbath because of doing that, and how she learned an interesting life lesson of actually making the most of those opportunities before her, whether it's keeping the Sabbath day holy, whatever those pursuits may be. And I like that example because obviously we can mess up and learn the hard way, just like David learns. And the next thing that happens, though, Bathsheba is with child.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
And it's most unfortunate for David because her husband hasn't been there in a while. So there's no real covering that up. So what does he do to try to cover up his sin, Jeff? And
at first he's like, oh, get Uriah back from the front. Uriah's out there. He's a soldier. He's like, get him back here, hopefully assuming that he will come home, be with his wife, and then all will be fine. And Uriah just refuses. I don't know how you refuse from your commander-in-chief, but whatever. He refuses and said, no, I'm here with my soldiers.
I know.
I'm not leaving.
It's even worse because he doesn't leave because he's being loyal to David. That's like a slap in the face to David.
Know. And so then, this is when it gets even worse. So David's freaking out because he's sitting there thinking, I'm the king. I have impregnated one of my soldiers' wives. This is going to blow up at some point. And so what do I do for more damage control? Oh, I'll have my commander send Uriah just off to, the most dangerous place on the front where he's guaranteed to get killed. And that's what happens eventually. Yeah. And so it's sad because the appearance-wise, it all looks fine in the end. Oh, David has a new wife and they are going to have a child and blah, blah, blah. But you can't hide what actually happened from God, even if David knew what he was doing. And the Lord condemned David and David knew what went on.
Yeah, and I think for the rest of David's life, he was sad about this decision he had made. And I think, like, you know, and I think by the end of his life, he understood it. He wasn't just sad because of the ramifications or the consequences, but he was sad that he was the kind of man who would make that decision. And I think he really progressed through to the end of his life where he really was a changed person.
Yeah, he did. I mean, there's the difference, like we talk about, between godly sorrow and just sorrow for being caught. You know, being sorry for what you've done or sorry for just people finding out about it. I do like when he's talking to the prophet Nathan, there's the parable of the rich man and the poor man, which I think is very interesting.
This is before he gets it. You know, before...
Lay it out to us. What happens in this thing?
Oh, okay. So he's talking to Nathan, and Nathan knows what happened, but I don't think David really gets it yet. He's just still caught up in the consequences and the logistics. But Nathan tells him this parable. So the parable is that there's this rich man who has a lot of sheep, and there's a visitor who comes, and he wants to prepare a feast for him. But instead of taking one of his many sheep, he takes this man's...
He takes the poor man's sheep.
He takes the poor man's sheep, who he has only one. Yeah. And so when David hears this story, he gets so mad. He's like, why did the rich man do this? We need to punish the rich man.
Yeah. And then Nathan just says, yeah, David, this is metaphor. It's you. You're the rich man. And then David he's bewildered.
Oh.
But then he starts to put it together little by little. And he understands the consequences more and more of his actions. And what we do see is that David he's genuinely repentant. In some ways, it is sad because everything we'll find of whatever we have, scriptures or teachings from the brethren, describe David having lost his exaltation. Like, that's not something that's changed as far as I'm aware, based on statements from even latter-day prophets. But it doesn't mean one cannot still repent and truly experience a contrite heart. And that's what you even see in Psalm 51 when David's writing all these things about the pain he's felt, the mercy of the Lord, acknowledging his sins, which is one of the first ones. He really realizes he did wrong. And I like that near the end, he describes, that forgiveness is a cleansing experience. He feels restored. He feels delivered. And I think these are all wonderfully appropriate descriptions to describe how we can feel through repentance. And I don't know how David felt, because David must have known it's great that I'm back on track. I am changed from this. It still stands that I went as far as arranging the murder of somebody. And, that has to sit with you for a while, I suppose. But we can, I guess the takeaway is that we can still find joy. You can learn a lot about the repentance and, some sense of happiness that can come even if you fall really, really far and then try to dig yourself back out. And I
think that David in Psalms 51, he says that he will teach transgressors to, well, where is that verse? He will teach transgressors, thy ways, and sinners shall be converted unto thee. I think what David really wanted is for when people make that first mistake to take care of it right then, and to not keep binding your wrists and floss, and to really turn to the Lord before it gets to that point.
Yeah, definitely, to get better. And that's, I think, the most important lesson for us, because we are always going to have moments of whatever it may be, impurity, temptation. We're humans. It's the question of how much we let those things continually push us down and build upon themselves exponentially in many cases. Or I think a big part of discipleship is learning how to just weather those things, push them off, shake them off, and keep going. I think all too often, I believe a lot of people feel that one of the hallmarks of true discipleship is that you simply chug along and don't feel any temptations or any struggles or anything like that. And it's really, I think, more true discipleship is learning how to deal with the weaknesses and the frailties of mortality. That's maybe that's just my opinion. I don't know if that's true,
I'll agree with you.
Okay, thank you. Kindly, very much. Folks, this is, of course, Lesson 24, Create in Me a Clean Heart. Please visit us at thisweekinmormons.com. If you have not yet subscribed to this podcast and you liked what you heard, well, then we encourage you to do so, and you can do so on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Downcast app, or podcatchers, whatever it may be. Many, many options are before you. So we encourage you to use all of them and to write a review on iTunes. That helps us with our page rankings on there. It's a good thing. So that's going to be it. thisweekinmormons.com. Patricia, we love you.
Thank you.
Always wonderful to have you. This is Sunday School Bonanza, brought to you by This Week in Mormons, and we're wishing you